Voila. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
you're good.
Oh, okay, great. Sorry. I'm so overwhelmed with that introduction. I feel like dancing and dining. Thank you. That was wonderful. Welcome. Good morning. Good morning and welcome to West Valley Unitarian Universalist Church. My name is Jim Reay and I am your worship associate this morning. Our congregation is a theologically diverse religious community with membership open to all who are in accordance with our principles, mission, and vision. We are a welcoming congregation, and any and all we welcome to our community of mutual caring and serious intent to grow as spiritual and moral beings. Happy Valentine's Day. I hope this will be a special day for you and your loved ones. A flower cannot blossom without sunshine, and people cannot live without loved ones. By Max Muller, philologist. Philologist? I had to look that up. Philology is the study of language in spoken and written form. And Dr. Seuss said, "You know you're in love when you can't fall asleep because reality is finally better than your dreams." St. Valentine's Day was established in the year 496 to be celebrated on February 14 in honor of St. Valentine of Rome, who died on that day in the year 269. The day became associated with romantic love in the 14th century, apparently by association with the lovebirds of early spring. In the 18th century England, it grew into an occasion in which couples expressed their love for each other by presenting flowers, offering candy, and sending greeting cards known as Valentines. In modern times, we celebrate Valentine's Day with lots of red flowers, heart-shaped boxes of candy, other gifts with images of hearts, and of course, the figure of the winged Cupid. What are your earliest Valentine memories? I remember in first grade, each student decorated a shoebox with colored paper and glitter, poking a slot in the top for classmates to place personal Valentines. The holiday never passed for me without a good supply of red hot cinnamon candy and those chalky tasting but sweet Valentine heart candies with cute slogans such as "Be mine," "Kiss me," and "Be true." I'm happy that you've joined us today. I hope this Valentine's Day will be special for you and that you will find pleasure in our time together. It's time for us to light our chalice. And as Paul lights the chalice, I will share a few words about love. Thank you, Paul. Being deeply loved by someone gives us strength, while loving someone deeply gives us courage. We are most alive when we are in love. The only thing we never get enough of is love. And the only thing we never give enough of is love. A powerful happiness in this life is to love and to be loved. Please join me in the unison reading of our covenant. Love is the doctrine of our congregation. The quest for truth is our holy right, and service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humankind in friendship. Thus do we covenant. It's time for our offering. Our religious community exists by its mission, like a fire exists by burning. But a fire cannot burn without fuel. And it's the time, the energy, the imagination, the vision, the creativity, the compassion, the love, and the financial support of the members and friends of this community that fuels our mission to nurture and sustain a welcoming, inclusive, and diverse liberal religious community. You may contribute by using PayPal, or you can mail your offerings to the church or to Mark Olerking, our treasurer. Thank you, Joe. That was beautiful, just beautiful. Our theme this month is mercy. I like that word. When I think of mercy, it causes me to be introspective as I consider what mercy means to me. My dear mother often used the expression, mercy me, mercy me. It was always a sweet statement coming from her lips. However, I also acquired a phobia of my mother's, arachnophobia. Yes, I'm afraid of spiders, even the small harmless ones. Here's a cute example of mercy from Rudy Francisco. She asks me to kill the spider. Instead, I get the most peaceful weapons I can find. I take a cup and a napkin. I catch the spider, put it outside, and allow it to walk away. If I am ever caught in the wrong place at the wrong time, just being alive and not bothering anyone, I hope I am greeted with the same kind of mercy. It truly gives me great joy to welcome Reverend Cathy Corbin Menino back to our virtual Zoom pulpit, as today she shares with us When Mercy Seasons Justice.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Paul, for all you do. And I really enjoyed Emily's prelude with a little bit of Paris, France. Happy Valentine's Day to all of you. Charlie and I celebrated by going to the Sistine Chapel exhibit yesterday, hence the my background, the Sistine Chapel. Had a lovely celebration. However, just a little bit of trivia before I start. Michelangelo's gift to us was not a labor of love. He complained and griped. He hated it. He fought with the Pope that asked him to do it. And so he had his little method of revenge. On the martyrs, he would paint his own face. And on the devils and demons, he would paint his critics and the Pope. So he had his day. Shakespeare wrote that mercy was above all other earthly powers, and when seasoned with justice, was the power most resembling the power of God, power of love. Wendell Berry, environmentalist and poet, wrote, "Rats and roaches live by competition under the laws of supply and demand. It is the privilege of human beings to live under the laws of justice and mercy." Abraham Lincoln believed that mercy bears richer fruits than strict justice. And Augustine wrote, "Late have I loved you, O beauty ever ancient. You were within me, but I was outside. How desperately, how grievously I have needed the necessary mercy to experience self-respect." And Anne Lamott wrote that mercy creates a future for the downtrodden, hopeless, and hungry. Mercy begins as forgiveness, as a path away from judgment of self and neighbor requires major mercy. I agree with all of the above because I believe that mercy is the justice of love. Justice and mercy are related. Mercy is always tied to justice. If no punishment is involved, then mercy is not necessary. Ethicist and Professor Rushworth Kidder wrote, "Compelled to choose between justice and mercy, I would stick with mercy, for it speaks to love and compassion. One reason is that I can't imagine a world so full of love that justice would no longer be necessary. But I cannot imagine a world so full of justice that there would be no longer any need for love." Justice, in its broadest sense, is what people deserve. It means fairness, equal consideration under the law. It is the minimum people should receive. All people. Justice can be demanded because it is a civil right. But mercy, we can only plead and hope for. Economist G.W. Reinbold considers mercy an independent and imperfect virtue that tempers justice. It is remarkable because no one has a right to mercy. In fact, mercy is often granted when severity is merited. We saw just yesterday the imperfect virtue of mercy being granted when being justly held accountable was warranted. In all honesty, I experienced that imperfect virtue of mercy as a bitter pill. A second look, however, is that yesterday's congressional decision was perhaps not mercy, but a lack of courage to administer justice. There is a difference, I believe. Mercy goes beyond law and equity to compassion and empathy, shown especially to an offender or anyone subject to another's power. One must have some sense of the reality and struggle of the person, as well as the impact on his or her future, if mercy is not extended. At its root, mercy is enshrined in the Golden Rule. And I can't talk about mercy without referring to Bryan Stevenson's insightful book, Just Mercy. So I'd like to share a story from the book about the time he met Rosa Parks. Rosa Parks turned to me sweetly and said, "Now, Bryan, tell me who you are and what you're doing." I looked at her caregiver, Ms. Carr, to see if I had permission to speak, and she smiled and nodded at me. I then gave Ms. Parks my rap. "Yes, ma'am. Well, I have a law project called the Equal Justice Initiative, and we're trying to help people on death row. We're trying to stop the death penalty. We're trying to do something about prison conditions and excessive punishment. We want to end unfair sentences in criminal cases and stop racial bias in criminal justice." Ms. Parks leaned back, smiling. "Ooh, honey, all that's going to make you tired, tired, tired." We all laughed. I looked down a little embarrassed. Then Ms. Carr leaned forward and put her finger in my face and talked to me just like my grandmother used to, and said, "That's why you've got to be brave, brave, brave." In his brave, brave, brave work, Attorney Stevenson saw that Americans' prisons have become, in his words, warehouses for the mentally ill. In one case, he argued to the judge that not taking a person's mental health issues into consideration at trial was as cruel as saying to someone who has lost his legs, "You must climb these stairs with no assistance, and if you don't, you're just plain lazy." Or to say to someone who is blind, "You should get across this busy interstate highway unaided, or you're just cowardly." He writes, "Why do we want to kill all the broken people? What is wrong with us that we think a thing like that can be right?" He went on to say that the true measure of our character is how we treat the poor, the disfavored, the accused, the incarcerated, and the condemned. We are all broken by something. We have all hurt someone and have been hurt. We all share the condition of brokenness, even if our brokenness is not equivalent. Our shared vulnerability and imperfection nurtures and sustains our capacity for compassion. The closer we get to mass incarceration and extreme levels of punishment, the more, I believe, it's necessary to recognize that we all need mercy. We all need justice. And perhaps we all need some measure of unmerited grace. We have a choice. We can embrace our humanness, which means embracing our broken natures with compassion, or we can deny our brokenness, forswear compassion, and as a result, deny our own humanity." Unquote. In an article by Zisham Alim, he reports that the United States has the highest incarceration rate in the world, and I know we've heard that before. We have only 5% of the world's population, but 1/4 of its prisoners. 1 in every 109 adults are behind bars. U.S. prisons are dangerously overcrowded, house 10 times as many mentally ill individuals as the state hospitals designed to care for the mentally ill. We keep people locked up for unfathomably long periods of time, and they are plagued by inmate abuse, and prisons hold a far greater percentage of the country's Black population than South Africa did under apartheid. Nearly 2/3 of the inmates released every year return to prison. They face crippling discrimination in employment and housing. This is all to say that if you are convicted of an imprisonable crime in the United States, you are generally not shown any mercy. Bryan Stevenson is right. We do have a choice. It doesn't have to be this way. We do not have to be a nation that incarcerates its citizens more than any other, or spends over $87 billion a year on these warehouses for the mentally ill, the poor, the traumatized. Prisons can be a place of healing and reconciliation. I watched a documentary on Sweden's open prison system, and I was so impressed to realize that you can be held justly accountable for your actions and, at the same time, treated with dignity and mercy. and experienced rehabilitation and successful restoration back into society. I want to share this information with you this morning just to help us start thinking about ways of being just and merciful in light of the new administration's promise of prison reform. Sweden has the lowest reoffending rate in all of Europe, 16%, with their prison population falling since 2004 to 1%. In fact, their prisons have been closing over the years because the amount of people being arrested has also dropped radically. In an interview for The Guardian in 2014, Niels Oberg, Director General of Sweden's Prison and Probation Service, said, "Our role is not to punish. The punishment is the prison sentence itself. They have been deprived of their freedom. The punishment is that they are with us." Oberg believes that the reason their incarceration and recidivism rates are so low is due to the way Sweden treats its prisoners. It has to do with whether you decide to use prison as your first option or as a last resort, and what you want your probation system to achieve. Some people must be incarcerated, but it has to be a goal to get them back out into society in better shape than they were when they came in, he said. The main focus of Swedish prisons is that of rehabilitation. Swedish prisons treat the prisoners with respect. They're able to communicate with non-prisoners. The prison guards work collaboratively with the inmates. So there's a lack of tension, which U.S. prisons have, which more often than not lead to more violence, threats, and assaults to the prisoners. Inmates are given library access to university courses and apprenticeship courses in learning a range of skills. During their time in prison and after their release, these people are able to define themselves not just as criminals, and they're allowed to become more than their crime. Brian Stevenson writes that each of us are more than the worst thing we've ever done. Avoiding being unnecessarily cruel to people who break the law and help them become better people mean that people don't go out of prisons with trauma, without money, without skill, and without hope for the future. They can leave with respect for themselves for what they accomplished during their time in prison, and an almost definite guarantee that they won't reoffend. In an article in The Atlantic, Doran Larson wrote that he observed remarkable things in the prisons he visited, not just in Sweden, but also in Denmark, Norway, and Finland. They had common areas that included table tennis, pool tables, steel darts, and aquariums. Prisoner art ornamented the walls, painted in colors of mild greens and browns and blues, calming colors. But the most profound difference, he said, was that correctional officers fill both rehabilitative and security roles. Each prisoner has a contact officer who monitors and helps advance progress toward return to the world outside. High security prisons in the United States often involve caging and dehumanizing a prisoner. But the prisons in Nordic countries are designed to treat them as people with psychosocial needs that are to be carefully attended to. Prison workers fulfill a dual role of enforcer and social worker, balancing regulation of behavior with preparation for re-entry into society. The requirements to apply for a correctional officer job in the United States and Sweden are almost identical. The application must be over 18, the applicant must be over 18 and have at least graduated from high school. The Swedish correctional officers receive between 11 to 14 weeks longer training than the American guards to prepare them for the job and to educate them on the importance of establishing positive inmate-guard relationships. Even more remarkable is the use of open prisons. Prisoners at open prisons stay in housing that resembles college dorms. They have access to accessories such as televisions and sound systems and are able to commute to a job and visit families with electronically while being electronically monitored. Prisoners and staff eat together in the community spaces, and none are expected to wear uniforms. The implication in the Swedish model is that the sentenced individuals are primarily regarded as people with needs to be assisted and helped with rehabilitation, and that is at the heart of Sweden's penal policy. Sweden and America both share similar rates of inmates misusing drugs and alcohol. However, only 22% in the United States receive treatment, compared to 42% in Sweden. A lot of traditional prisons and jails in the United States are overcrowded with armed guards, concrete walls, cells with bars, vandal-resistant metal furniture, and little to no personal privacy. In Sweden, there is a tremendous focus on naturalizing the prison experience, making sure that the prisoners live in a healthy environment in order to help the inmates change their lives and decrease institutionalism. Inmates may plan a grocery budget, cook their own food, wear their own clothes, and vote from inside the prison. The Swedish Prison and Probation Service works towards removing any degrading living conditions, since it has been shown to benefit both the inmates and the staff in the long run. Again, the United States makes up 4.4% of the world population, but it has 22% of the world prison population, giving us the title of being number one in the world regarding incarceration rates. In 2014, 1 in every 204 Americans were behind bars, compared to Sweden's 1 in every 2,278. It is being recommended that we diminish police officer misconduct and wrongful arrests by increasing the length of United States police academies to provide the officers with better knowledge, training, and education. Correctional officer training and education should be extended to better prepare the U.S. officers for the job on how to positively impact the inmates while being incarcerated and how to help them change their lives. In the U.S. court system, it is suggested that bail is completely removed, since it can be argued that such method is more of a privilege than a right. Removing bail, suspects would no longer be detained simply due to their socioeconomic status, not being able to afford legal fees. Prison overcrowding may decrease as well, since less individuals would be held in jails while awaiting trial. It would also be ideal to eradicate plea bargains to make sure all individuals receive a fair and just trial. However, since the United States court system is built upon plea bargains, the system would most likely collapse if all cases were to go to trial. So the United States court system should focus on providing more education and longer training for their legal professionals in an effort to decrease bias and wrongful convictions, and to make sure all defendants are treated equally. The main focus of the United States correctional system should be on improving their prison conditions to prevent their inmates from becoming institutionalized and to help them reintegrate back into society. More humane prison environments have been shown to not only improve the well-being of the inmates, but also the well-being of the staff, as I mentioned before. There are some signs that the federal government thinks that the highly punitive system of mass incarceration seems to have been out of hand recently. In order to understand how best to fix these problems, we have to look beyond policy and consider the underlying moral philosophy that explains why a society sends people to prison in the manner that they do. In the United States, that philosophy is one of inflicting punishment and pain. It is time to change our philosophy to one of mercy and rehabilitation. There are some ways we can help. Cory Booker introduced legislation to create a sentence review procedure for people serving sentences longer than 10 years in federal prison. It's called the Second Look Act. We can urge our legislators in Congress to support it. The Lionheart Foundation provides free online training for volunteers with suggestions as to what is needed and can be provided by volunteers. There is the Prisoner Correspondent Project, writing letters as allies. A woman by the name of Emma Arbogast, a volunteer in an Oregon prison, blogged on Prison Insights that when children are abused and neglected, we care. We feel bad. We want to help them. We send them social workers. We pass laws to protect them. We create nonprofits and task forces. But when these same children grow up and act out their pain, confusion, and lack of modeling and parenting, we lock them up and forget them. We shame them and judge them and punish them. We take them away from their kids, their families, and anything that would help keep their dignity or humanity. When you show up in some way to volunteer in a prison, you are telling the inmates that someone outside of the prison wall cares about them. When you model positive behaviors and relationships, it can have a major impact on your community. A merciful prison system would be a massive undertaking. It would take an overhaul of our entire justice system, the courts, the prisons, law enforcement. Prison reform would be as difficult as it would be to eliminate racism, our homegrown caste system. At the root of all our social justice issues is our abandonment of the golden rule, our ignoring our seventh principle, in forgetting that each day of our lives we need to, as the prophet Micah said, act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly. My closing words are an expansion of my opening words from Shakespeare's Merchant of Venice. The quality of mercy is not strained. It droppeth as the gentle rain from heaven upon the place beneath. It is twice blessed. It blesses him that gives and him that takes. 'Tis mightiest in the mightiest. It becomes the throned monarch better than his crown. His scepter shows the force of temporal power, the attribute to awe and majesty wherein doth sit the dread and fear of kings. But mercy is above this sceptered sway. It is an attribute to God himself. And earthly power doth then show like as God's, when mercy seasons justice. May it be so. May we continue to work passionately for justice, but show love and mercy even more.
Amen. Amen to that. I would vote for you. Thank you, Reverend Cathy. That was stimulating and powerful. And one of the blessings of our service is that I can share your reflection with friends, and I can listen to it again on our YouTube channel. So thank you for sharing that powerful reflection. It's now time to read our mission statement. Please read in unison with me. Our mission statement. We agree to provide a safe place to celebrate diversity, draw inspiration for living better lives, foster social and environmental justice, and compassionately support each other in our spiritual searches. A special thanks to each person involved in making today's service possible. Our minister, musicians, co-hosts, who all spend hours in preparation to make our services run smoothly and be special occasions each Sunday. We will soon be departing this gathered community, but we do not leave our connection, our concerns, or our care for each other. The recording will end now. Please stay tuned for our postlude, followed by Joys and Sorrows and our fellowship